Hey, welcome to the show. My name's Dan. This is the NonProfit Narrative Podcast. On today's episode, our first journey together. This is an interview that I did a couple months back with Dave Avramovich. He's a Young Life area director. He is responsible for the Los Angeles area, and he's also a pretty great guy. The fun part about today is this is a maiden voyage. So I had to build this studio, so that's why it kind of took so long. And so hopefully very shortly here, we'll have a lot more episodes. But check out what Dave has to say about what we can do as nonprofits to raise money. One thing that Dave is really great at is raising money. He's actually never had a problem with it, which is pretty wild. So let's hear what he has to say. Check it out. All right. Well, welcome, Dave. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dan. I'm so excited to be here. It'll be good.
Thanks for the maiden voyage as we figure out what we're doing. So this is great. So Dave, you do a lot of things. But can you help me specifically understand what you do in Young Life, because you cover this huge area that is probably unlike any other area in Young Life, I imagine, because LA tends to be like that.
Yeah, it's a good area. I'm the regional director for Young Life. That's my official title in Los Angeles. And I'm basically a middle manager. I work between the office in Colorado with the people who do direct ministry in Los Angeles across LA. So it's kind of a cool geography because it goes up into Antelope Valley and Santa Clarita Valley in one corner, all the way down to Long Beach in the opposite corner. And then it's like Thousand Oaks, Malibu, depending on which freeway you're on, out to Rancho Chino. So it's kind of every junior high school kid between those four corners is kind of the world that I swim in. And so it's a really fun place. There's other places in the country that do my job that are Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. And so I'm lucky to have a super compact space that's also really fun and cool place to be, but also has a lot of unique challenges, really great place. So love that, love what it's about. And it's been great. I've been here for only 15 years in January, which is really something.
15 years in LA?
Yeah, so I moved here in 2003 to go to grad school, and then I've been on Young Life staff 15 years, and I did that after I worked in the church. I worked at Iglesia de la Comunidad in Highland Park, and then I was at a Presbyterian church in Glendora before that. And but I've really found a home in Young Life, and I love what Young Life's about. So it's been really great, meaningful experience for me. I still get to work with kids directly. I still coach football, all these things that are really meaningful to me. But yeah, I just love working with junior high school kids, especially kids that struggled when they were that age like I did. So it's a big part of my story.
Dang. Oh, see, I didn't know that. I've been here 13 years. I didn't realize that it was just a little longer for you. Cool. So that's about 17 million people approximately.
Yeah.
And their kids. So that's fun. That seems huge. So does that weigh on you?
Yeah, we did a mapping project 2 years ago, and we kind of took all the junior high and high school kids that were in schools over 200 kids, anywhere within a zip code that was within our region. And it came out to 961,000 kids that are part of kind of the LA region that we would consider viable target schools. So if you did a market study, with 961,000 kids that we kind of said, these are our kids. These are the kids we want to put an adult into their life, walk with them, love them, build a relationship with them, support them through thick and thin, and give them an opportunity to hear the gospel, which is incredible, but love them regardless of their response. So just such a great opportunity to walk with kids, to care about them. But that's a lot. It's a lot of kids. And when I started pre-COVID, which, COVID kind of threw everything out into a new space, but we knew about 7,500 kids across LA. We had about 400 leaders that were hanging out with kids regularly. So we had a pretty good impact on kids. And we were walking with them. And our hope is to continue to grow that. But you look at 961,000 kids and you just go, well, gosh, how is anybody ever going to touch them all? And we don't expect to do that. But boy, that'd be nice. And so we'd like to impact as many kids as we possibly can. And, but it is a lot. And I think about all the kids that fall through the cracks, and kids that don't have an opportunity to have somebody in their life that cares about them. The average high school kid has 2 minutes of meaningful interaction with adults, and that includes their parents. And so,
Every day?
yeah, daily. So if you think about 2 minutes, including parents, where like there's like an idea is shared and there's like exchange of listening and stuff.
As opposed to, oh, school today. Good. Okay. And they're gone.
Yeah, exactly. Or like they text. Texting isn't actually exactly, it could be, I guess, more meaningful. People break up over text message, but
I don't recommend that.
I don't, yeah, strongly do not recommend. But kids come home, they eat in their rooms, they're on their phones, they're on their laptops, they're doing homework, they use every excuse they can to not interact with people. And if I have a 5-minute conversation with a kid outside the locker room, we're 2.5 times that. And so if we can get 2,000 people to do that across LA with kids every day, go and hang out with kids, to coach them, to teach, to talk about that, to think about it that way, and that's transformative. And research is very clear that kids need adults in their life that actually care about them, that listen to them, and that we're just partnering with a bunch of other places that do that same thing. And the team I'm on, there's 4 teachers, an administrator, and 2 coaches, and it's a tremendous team, and they're making a huge difference in the lives of the kids that they're working with. So it's just, but that's one place, that's one school. And you got to think about I think it's 1,066 schools in LA within that geography. And it's quite the burden.
Yeah. I mean, just the logistics on it sound like I'm tired already, and I'm not even doing that job. Just thinking about it is just like, whoa. Well,
if I was doing it myself, it would be like exhausting non-starter. But we have a great team of people, great group of volunteers, great group of adults in each community. The way Young Life starts is like somebody in the community goes, "Hey, who's working with our kids?" I mean, that's usually the way it starts, and then they call us, and then different people on our team, the regional level, and then at the area level, we have incredible staff people. They're called to their place, really feel rooted in their community, care about the kids, know more about the kids in their community than most people in their community, spend a ton of time with kids, talking with kids, going to games and concerts and musicals and after school to hang out and just doing what they do. And these are passionate people that really love, and they're the ones that kind of drive everything at the local level. And then you get these incredible volunteer leaders or teachers or coaches or people that do it because they love kids. And so it's just a great opportunity for them when they get after it. But it is it's a lot. And getting time with people has become increasingly challenging. People have less time. People are less generous with time. Kids are busy and overscheduled oftentimes. Yeah. And it's true in both wealthy and not as wealthy sections, where kids I'm trying to get into Harvard, and I'm going to be disappointed when I get into Yale in some communities. And then there's communities where kids go straight from school. They can't play sports, can't do extracurriculars because they got to go home and take care of their 3 or 4 siblings, in their apartment. And so you just kind of think about all these kids and you go, when do they get to be kids? Like when I was growing up, I got done with school, like came home, rode my bike, went to practice, drove up to Subway. It was pretty simple. These kids now, their lives are so different, and finding space and time for them where they can be kids is really challenging. And so, but they still want to hang out. They still like that. But it is hard to find time for them.
Totally. So with your job though, it seems very highly relational, from both a ground level of interacting with high school, junior and senior hires, but also just your team. What do you do to stay motivated, either in interacting with it? I mean, does it give you energy, or do you have to go like recharge your batteries alone, or how do you stay up?
Yeah, it's both. I mean, it just kind of depends on the day whether it's easy to be motivated because something great happened, or if there's some really discouraging things that happen. One of my old Young Life kids, I got a text message on Thursday saying that he had passed away. And, kids shouldn't he's young, so you get that text message from people, and it's hard to feel motivated in the moment. But then you think about the urgency of these are real kids dealing with real situations, and you think,
Yeah.
who else is having conversations with him? Like, who else is having conversations with kids? Yeah, there's certainly like it's a lot of management kind of stuff, and some of that stuff feels really inconsequential on some days when there's really heavy things. I think Black Lives Matter protests made a lot of things seem really urgent, and other things seem really unimportant. As you were walking with kids that were asking serious questions, and so I think balancing and understanding that the whole project is a long game, and then being able to recognize the priority in the moment. In ministry, I think a lot of the times you want to make a business decision, but that's the wrong decision because it's not a business. And centering people and conversations are really important. And so I've told this story to donors before in the past, but we went down for Mother's Day with my family, my wife. We were going to celebrate with her mom and do all this, and found out that one of our kids got in a car accident. It was very serious. They didn't think he was going to make it, and we literally left 8:30 in the morning from Orange County to come back to LA to be with kids. And it's really inconvenient. I don't think I would do that if I worked at some other for-profit company, unless I was maybe the CEO. And so you find yourself going, this matters, this work matters. And kids were texting me that morning saying, did you hear? I just want to see people. I don't know what to do with this. And it's like, well, let's create a space where you can ask those questions and be together. We had 300 kids in a backyard at 5:30 p.m. So there's this clamoring for connection, for relationships that kids talk about. And so I think when you look at it when you could see the big picture, when you could see the difference it makes to have relationships with kids or create space for kids where you actually honor them and let them share and speak and be themselves, it's easy to stay motivated to create spaces like that, to give kids opportunity towards relationships like that. I think when you get caught up and you're like responding to the 7th email in a row, or you're in a meeting where you're like, we're talking about something, and you just go, this isn't the most important thing right now, or that can be challenging. But I think when you can recognize that you're moving forward and kids are being impacted, it keeps me motivated. I think at the end of the day, like, my personal story is what keeps me motivated. I was a knucklehead kind of junior high school kid, parents divorced, and didn't have very many opportunities to talk, to be with people that cared about me. And I got really lucky. I'm one of those kids with like the high score, for complications in life where, there's a lot of problems. They call it ACEs score. And I have a high number there, but I was lucky to have great friends whose parents were incredible in my life that cared about me. I had a couple people, football coaches or mentors, that became my friend and really helped me navigate life and change the trajectory of my life. So I just think of kids out there like me who are, I'm a Zennial, so born in between 77 and 83, and was very competent and confident to be left alone and nobody bugged me, and I'd get home on my own and I'd take care of myself until my single mom came home from work. But I was lucky to be drawn out of that by some incredible people, some of my best friends' parents, or some people at the school. And so I'm just a lucky person who recognizes now how impactful an investment in people can be, and specifically in kids that are looking for meaning or hope or help. So that keeps me really motivated.
Okay. So how do you approach, like, so I assume that there's a fair amount of fundraising that you have to deal with to keep the lights on kind of thing and keep everybody running and have resources, especially because, and I'm sure we'll talk about that, but the last 2 years have been, I like can't even imagine like all of a sudden you got masks and trying to like, hey, let's meet. That's our whole thing. And now, well, maybe you can't. I don't know. Like, and just all of that, and then just the crazy response. But how do you approach fundraising? Because I know you do it very well. I know that that is my understanding is that it's not much of a struggle for you. Which for some people will be like, how is that even possible that you cannot struggle with fundraising? But so how do you approach it?
Well, first, that's very kind. I mean, it's a very much a luck thing. I think I've been lucky to have in my life people who believe in me and also believe in what we do. So that's part of it. And frankly, they have capacity. So I was lucky to meet some of the first kids I met when I came on staff 15 years ago. I didn't know anything about their families or their parents, and they've certainly had a tremendous impact on what we're trying to do. And I think the biggest thing I would say is I don't do it alone. I build teams. That's probably the biggest thing. Gather people around and invite them into kind of a bigger vision. That's a huge part of making it kind of a meaningful piece. For me, I like working in teams. I think that makes it easier. I think you make better decisions in teams. I like diverse teams that make better decisions. So you don't want everybody from the same church, or everybody from the same city, or everybody from the same socioeconomic background or political background or whatever. And so having a diverse team that kind of strategizes that out is really good, and really helpful for me. At the end of the day, the piece that is most challenging is for people that I work with in Young Life even is actually asking. I mean, they just have a hard time asking somebody to help. And I don't know why I don't have that same concern, but I don't. I like asking people for help and inviting people to help. And I can be pretty bold. It doesn't make it super comfortable, but I kind of have recognized that people want to help. And I think they get excited about things that are making a difference and impact. And so giving people an opportunity is really what we are about, what we try to be about. And, some people, the opportunity is to give $50 a month, and other people, the opportunity is they could give 500 million if they wanted to, so given the opportunity to people to say, hey, this is an opportunity for you to make a difference without having to do it. You can make a huge difference in the lives of people, but you don't have to do it. Do you want to be a part of that? And this is how I see that working well. And I think people get excited about that. I think one of the things I like to say about we take kids to camp in the summer is it's one thing to say, hey, you should go to camp. It's another thing to say, hey, I want you to come to camp. Will you come with me? And I think the same is true for donors. Like, hey, you should give to Young Life is not the same thing as, hey, I want you to give to Young Life. Will you give? And I think that invitation, that kind of style of invitation, obviously, you got to have a plan. You got to know why you need it, what you're trying to do. You got to have some impact. It's hard to get people to give money when you don't know what you're doing or something like that. But when you have real impact and real vision, I think you can invite people, and that invitation, and then you got to shut your mouth. I think that's the other part. I'm not as good at that part, obviously, but you invite people to give and then shut up.
Yeah.
And let those people.
Wait, you don't want to just fill the space?
No.
Fill the space? It feels so weird. I want to fill the space.
No, you want them to fill the space. And they often, they're thinking about it. And, from my experience, I live with a educator for a long time, and the person who's doing the thinking is the person who's doing the learning. So if I can create a space for them to think about what their impact could be if they made a generous donation, a sacrificial donation, a game-changing donation, just give them a space to give leadership gifts, to make an impact on kids, and shut up. I think people are drawn to the space.
Yeah. So I heard you've got to have a goal. I heard you've got to have some vision on what's going on. But then what does your pitch even look like? Are you just, is it on the phone? Is it in person? Is it at a dinner? Is it at an event? Like when you do your fundraising, what does it look like?
Yes, all of those.
Oh, okay.
I mean, but I think it just depends on the capacity. I mean, we'll send a letter
Sure.
at year end, like most organizations. We'll send a hard copy letter. We'll send an email, like most organizations. We'll send videos in those emails. So we do some of that. Great, doing our best to tell stories of impact. And the best thing is kids talking. If you get a video of kids talking about what it means to have an adult in their life and why that matters to them, that's better than that. I've learned some things about a story about lots of people is not as good as a story about one person. So telling one great story instead of like, oh yeah, we had 32 kids come to camp with us is not as good as, let me tell you about my friend, Andrew, who came to camp with me, and let Andrew tell his story. I mean, that's way more powerful. So we do some of that. I think the big thing is in the one-on-one stuff, which is usually where all your high capacity people should be engaged, or in small groups maybe, but in smaller settings, it's first listening. What do you care about? What is it that you're passionate about that aligns with what we're doing? And that part shouldn't happen in the meeting where you're asking for money. That should happen 3, 4, 5, 6 meetings beforehand as you're listening. And then I think the sit down with them is, here's where I think you could make a big difference. Yeah. And here's why it will make a big difference. And then you give them the number, and then you shut up. And then all the real work is trust after that. So how do you build trust? By demonstrating that you are delivering on the things that they said they were giving to. So I make an ask, it could be $10,000. And if you make a $10,000 ask and they give it, then it's on you to demonstrate how that money is being used in a way where they go, this group, this person, this team is trustworthy. And the next time you might get 10,000 again, or they might say, can I do more? Is there something else? So I think the part that is often missed is you make a vision. A lot of people do that. A lot of people will ask people, it's the follow-up afterwards where you demonstrate, hey, here's what we said we wanted to do. Here's how we've done it. And here's the impact. And doing that well, doing that relationally, where you're like actually talking to them, and it's not, hey, I'm reporting to you. I'm not sending you an email. Like, I'm just telling you about how excited I am about what your gift has done to impact kids. And what I've seen in my history, it's brief, and it's LA is a unique place to raise money, is people want to help more. The people that want to,
that's so interesting that it's cyclical.
Yeah. So I think demonstrating trustworthiness is a huge part on the back end of the ask, but the ask is important. We also do events and do the same thing. But events are kind of weird because you get people that know Young Life really well, and people that are like, what's Young Life? And so you have to kind of aim a little bit wider. And so I don't think that's a great way to raise money, but it is a great entry point for people. And so people get to hear the stories, they get to see a kid talk. But again, all the work is trustworthiness on the back end. And I think that's a vision's a vision. If you have demonstrated any fruit of your work, I think it's hard to get people on board with a vision, regardless of how catchy or cool or fun it is. If you have demonstrated effectiveness, and then you build something aspirationally, and you build relationships with people where you ask and get to know what they care about, then you can invite people in and then demonstrate your trustworthiness after the fact that you did what you said you were going to do. Mm-hmm. And then I think people are more inclined to go, this is a great organization. And they might even tell their friends, they might give more. And I think that does feed itself.
Because it's a lot easier to tee up that second ask if you've got that stuff, because that's just ammo, as it were, But as opposed to, I think a lot of nonprofits are really terrible at the follow-up or at the thank you, the response, or what, like you're saying, demonstrate. Because usually it's like, hey, we did the thing, and then it's like, great, and then nothing until the next ask, and then the next ask. But did you get enough money to build the playground? Oh yeah, we did that. Okay, do you have a photo? Do you have anything? Like, I gave money to, like, I feel like Kickstarter campaigns do better at sometimes responding
Because you get the CD. You actually get the CD or the album art, or
right? Yeah,
you get the board game, right? So it is. I mean, I think nonprofits could learn a lot from places like Kickstarter. I mean, I think there's just a lot. I added someone to our team to help me and our region be better at that, because with all the things that we're doing with kids, supervising staff, working with the volunteers in the areas, planning operations, that's one of the easiest things that you lose sight of in a lot of nonprofits. Or on the other side, they have like an army of fundraisers that it's like mechanical. And so we have to land somewhere in the middle, because we don't have the money to afford an army. But we do have somebody who can say, this is the work that needs to be done. Here's a list of thank you notes, and here's 4 phone calls I need you to make, and here's 2 meetings I need you to schedule next month, just to sit with someone and say thanks. And I think that work is really meaningful. Yeah, it's a little more pointed than it can feel overwhelming at times, but it is helpful because it's very clear, and she's incredible. So
that's great.
Yeah,
that's great. So what about the pandemic? How did you have to adjust with the pandemic? Because again, you're an organization that meets weekly, usually with teen kids around the area. So what did that end up looking like for you during the pandemic? And how did you not I feel like pivot, everybody said pivot. So I just feel like if I say pivot, all of a sudden it's like a whole thing. But like, what did you guys do to make it better?
Well, we pivoted, Dan.
No, all right. Okay, good.
It's it's a little bit challenging to do what we do in the pandemic, because we couldn't just go, oh, we have a restaurant, now let's do takeout, curbside takeout. We couldn't just shift and offer the same thing, because what we offer it's not a program, it's not a package, it's not a binder of readings or something like that. Like, right. So it was very painful.
In proximity and
yeah. So it was really painful. I mean, it was a really painful shift for a lot of our staff who have committed to being around kids and with kids 30 hours a week, to suddenly nothing like that. And we went largely where kids went, which is online and on phones. I FaceTimed with kids a ton and texted with kids a ton. And it was a really painful and sad situation. It was okay, I think, for the first couple months, because we spent so much time with kids that we were able to catch up on some of the infrastructure things that we kind of let slide when we're doing all the relational things. But then there's only so much of that we really care to do. And then we just want to be with people. And so we didn't really have that opportunity. I mean, we didn't do club after March. We didn't do camp. We didn't do club in the fall. So we had this like really challenging season, which everybody talks about. As a leader in our region, it was probably the most challenging work I've done, because I wasn't coaching people up on how to be with kids. I was coaching people up on how to survive. And
unmute your Zoom.
Yeah, well, that too.
I think you're on mute.
It's still a problem. I saw the same problem. But no, how to survive in this environment where you're not able to do the parts of the job that are most life-giving, which is walking with kids, which is by far the most life-giving part. If you didn't have to do anything else, everybody would be on your life staff. And so all these people that are used to doing that, and all the joy and relational heartache that is related to walking with junior high and high school kids and college kids, disappeared. And we had people that were like in withdrawal. We had people that were in shock, that were angry, that were frustrated. I put on like my counseling hat as a leader and went through with our staff a lot of really challenging conversations with them, because like a lot of people, this is what I want to do, and I feel called to it, and I can't do it. I'm not allowed to do it.
Right.
And that was true for them. On the inverse was all these adults across LA, and I think across the country, that had resources. Some obviously were really crushed by COVID and lost their jobs, and obviously had terrible situations. And, we lost a handful of really faithful, great, committed donors just because they couldn't afford it,
Right.
which made sense to me. But then there were other people that, they had healthcare stock, or they had their 4 vacations that they had planned for their family got sidelined, and so they had extra money, and people wanted to help. It was a weird juxtaposition of frustrated staff people not being able to go to schools. I mean, schools were, I was supporting counselors and like teachers and coaches, and then also got all these donors that are like, how can I help? These kids are desperate for relationships they're not getting. Like, they're literally trapped in their house, and you can only stand your brother or sister so long before you're like, I need somebody else. I need my friends. And kids with access to outdoor spaces or backyards were acted like COVID didn't exist. They were just hanging out in the backyard with their friends.
Yep.
And kids that didn't, they were really trapped. And so these, I think adults understood this. They understood the story, and they were desperate to help in any way that they could. So they were looking for opportunities. And again, back to the conversation about building trust, is calling some of these people and saying, how are you? How's your business? How's your work? How's your life? How are your kids doing?
Yeah.
Not talking about how Young Life needs money, because Young Life, with all the programs down, I mean, our expenses changed. Sure. Quite significantly. But I mean, it's a worldwide pandemic for a reason, and it affected everyone in some way, some much more than others. And asking people how they were doing and how Young Life was doing was a common response from these people that really did care. So my job changed significantly. Normally I'm a strategy, vision, kind of inviting people in guy, and it became how do I support our people the best I can? But even in telling that story of, well, hey, here's where we're at, donors were like, that's meaningful work. And when we can get back to kids, the kids are ready. The kids are ready, and getting these people ready to go was a super high priority for adults. Our region raised more money during the pandemic than it had in the history of the region.
What? That's
and
crazy.
So, yeah, it's crazy. And it's, we have some incredible people and some great vision, and our people did a great job. But I think people understand how important it is, how kids graduated, they didn't get a senior year, they didn't get a football season or prom. Like, they care about kids, and that's true everywhere. That there's not a part of LA that wasn't touched by that.
Yeah. And
how do we get kids back to talking and laughing and hanging out together with adults that they trust is a high priority for a lot of people, and the urgency is real right now. And you see it when you talk to parents of kindergartners or 4th graders or 7th graders. They all recognize COVID changed their kids. They're a little bit different. How do we get them back to normal, back socializing, less stunted, as quick as we can? And that's a great venue for that. And so we've had some people that go, let's do this. The other side is it was kind of unique timing with our big vision to the center of LA. And so we've been working on it for 3 years. And then it was, hey, as soon as COVID and the pandemic loosen in a way that allow us to get back with kids, we had already built a plan and had set up to go really quickly post-COVID. And so people were excited about that, and the urgency was there for that as well. And so we got a little bit of a tiger by the tail on the South LA project.
Oh, nice. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Do you have any resource, like, what are some things, like, again, 15 years, so you've I'm sure you've been through a few resources now and again. Is there anything that you like check out that you check back with? Like, I have just a few books either on life philosophy or whatever that I consistently go back to. But like, is there anything resource wise that you listen to or read or watch, or anything that you would recommend to anybody watching this or listening?
Well, I'm a huge fan of multipliers, the principles of Liz Wiseman, and that you have to give kind of the opportunity to be bigger than just what you can do. And so I think that's true. Nonprofits tend to think, Young Life, I should say, Young Life thinks it's the best at what it does. And Young Life's pretty good at what it does. But Young Life has a lot to learn from people who have been doing it longer than them in places that Young Life hasn't existed. And so finding those people and empowering them and giving them opportunities to do it is a huge part of what I think makes nonprofit kind of that synergy happen, where people go, this is exciting what they're doing. And I think it's also a good check as a leader on what it means to, are you really rigid, or are you open to a better way forward? And so she's super powerful. I've heard her speak several times. She's really dynamic, and obviously her book Multipliers is a really good tool. But most of what I read are leadership books like that. So I really loved the new Extraordinary Leader, which talks about kind of how to build trust. There's capacities and skills that are really important in leadership, but it doesn't really matter if you don't have character. And I think working with donors is largely that. It's demonstrating character, trustworthiness, as I said earlier, that kind of thing. So people don't care if you have a great strategy or great ideas if you're a bad person or unreliable or manipulative. And so building that is the most important thing you can do. All the rest of the capacities can kind of go up or down, but character and trust are kind of the core of that. I think those are probably two of the biggest resources. I love Patrick Lencioni's books on ideal team player, and I love his 5 dysfunctions of a team. Those 2 books have kind of driven a lot of the conversation that we've had in our region to get healthy as we transition from previous transitions, and to kind of just talk through those things, being hungry, humble, smart. Those things are really important things for leaders, but also for teammates. And I think the inattention to results and absence of trust, those 2 ends of those pyramids, both those things are real in nonprofits, where you can kind of have teams that just really don't trust each other. And I think that's true. I think donors are part of your team. I think that's a big part of what we do in nonprofits. So donors don't trust you. You don't trust donors to be transparent with you. But also at the top of the pyramid, the inattention to results really in nonprofits can be something, but everybody loves to pay attention to the things they deliver on. And so that's why when you tell a donor, hey, we're going to go do this, and then you do it, it's easy to go back to the donor and say, hey, we said we were going to do this. We did it. Here's how it's going. Thanks so much. You are the reason this is happening, which is true, all true. None of that is phony. It's all real. And that is transformative for that whole deal. So those will probably be some of those. I like podcasts too, but I like silly podcasts. So Wait, Don't Tell Me is my favorite podcast on NPR. So what can you do?
Dave, that is so good. Thank you so much for spending time with me and talking to me about what this looked like. It's good that you were here for my training wheels.
Well, it's happy to help. You've helped me, and you've put plenty of training wheels on my bike. So I appreciate you, and thanks for having me on.
And thank you for listening. This has been the Nonprofit Narrative Podcast. The idea with this podcast is to give you some extra information on what to do. This is such a weird time, I think, in just humanity, honestly. And as we're coming out of a pandemic and trying to raise money and try to talk to people about what Story can do for their nonprofit and how to involve more people, this is the little thing I can do. So I wanted to share that with you. And if you want to check out more, you can always check out portnoymediagroup.com. There's resources available. They're free to go grab that are around the Nonprofit Narrative, my book, or there's other things on email and onboarding and bringing people into the fold that way. Big thanks to Dave. You can check him out, and I'll post the links in the down below and also in the comments on the podcast. And thanks so much for listening. Have a great one. Thanks for joining me on the maiden voyage, and we'll see you soon.